Hello again. This is Valerie Cartonio joining you on the Prison Pod. I want to remind you this show is for you and we like to hear from you. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen available, grab it real quick because I want to give you an address. A lot of our programs are based on letters coming in from our listeners. So I want to hear from you. Just write us at the Prison Pod, Post Office Box 294. Orono, Maine, 04473. We've been so fortunate having great guests this season, and we have a real unique person joining us today. We have Andy Williams Jr. joining us from Illinois, and he has a passion for social justice, peacemaking, and restorative justice. And today he is going to talk to us some about going from prison to presidential applicant. And I'd like to welcome you, Andy. How are you?
Barry, I'm great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. It really is. It's an honor.
You're a real tough person to introduce because you have a list of accreditations. And some of the things that I noticed right off was that you're a minister. Can I ask a little bit about that?
Yes, and so when I back in '97, I was selling drugs, and but I was working at a car dealership, and the guy at the car dealership, he used to rent from my dad. He was a drug addict at one time, and he was at the car dealership where I started working at, and we just started talking, and he had changed his life, and he went to a church, and then I went to the church that he went to, and I was drawn there. And I was coming from selling dope, from gang banging, in prison. I mean, I hadn't been in prisons for like 5 years, but I still had this war going on with my life. And when I went to the church, I just learned a lot. Even though I grew up in the church, I was an altar boy, did sign language, so I don't want to make it seem like this is the first time I went to church. But from that journey, I got ordained as a deacon. Then later down the line, I became a minister. And then today, my bio shifted because now I'm a rabbi. I identify as an Israelite, and so the Bible for me is my ancestors, but not my ancestors as in, well, those were people of color. My ancestors as saying, I believe all of us, that's our story from a historical perspective. And the rabbi back then would just be a teacher. And for those that can adhere to the message of Yeshua, which they call him Christ, he was a teacher, like he was considered a rabbi. And so today, with the things that I'm doing, I see myself more as a teacher, the rabbi guy. So that's the part of the ministry and my little journey to where I'm at today.
I really love that. One thing that I had read somewhere was a mention of not being able to relate to a white Jesus. And, my philosophy always was the area that Jesus came from, he was probably dark skinned. He probably wasn't white. So I think we've had a misconception on that for many years.
I agree.
So you've had quite a life. I'm not exactly sure even where to begin. Do you want to talk a little bit about your prison experience first? Or I know a lot of people like to put that behind them and not even discuss it.
So my first time going to prison, I didn't even know I was in prison. It's probably the first, 9 months I was in my mother's womb before I got pushed out. That's the first bit I like to say I always did. So that was the first, being from a funny position, prison. But then growing up, I grew up in a 2-parent household. My mother is German, well, my stepmother, but she's my mother. And she would be what we would consider white, but I like to deal with nationality, so she's German. And if we know about Germans, they're very disciplinarian, strict in areas. And I would be on punishment, I feel like, for months, punished in my room. And that was a form of prison, but I didn't see it back then. I was always mad about it, but I think that helped me because when I went to jail, actual real jail, and they be like, you going to the hole for 3 months. I don't care. It wasn't nothing to me because I had already been accustomed to doing that, living that way. And so I had several times being arrested as a juvenile for the retail theft, curfew, just stuff that I was doing. And the first time I really went to the county jail, it was for a drug case. I had got caught with some drugs and I was in jail for like 3 days. No, let me take that back. That's the second time. The first time I went to jail, real jail, I was locked up for 9 months in the county for a strong arm robbery. The one I actually went to jail for, I did not do. So this back in 91. So I'm still saying that I did not do the one I actually went to prison for. So I did 9 months in the county jail and then 4 months in the Department of Corrections. When I got out from that stint, the house I was paroled to was my childhood home. And my uncle was living in the downstairs, and he was a drug addict and would do heroin and stuff. And his wife was a prostitute. And so when my buddy come over to the house, he like, bro, you in a good spot. So then I started selling dope for the first time. It was 91 October. And by January 92, I got raided and I was back in jail. But I beat the dope case in the bench trial. I got a law library pass and I read everything I could about drugs. I had already confessed to it being my drugs because one of my friends was there. I got set up from an informant, and I'm old school, so you don't take my case. So I made up some story about how I found the drugs, but I beat the case in a bench trial. And that was 11 months. And then when I got out from there, I went to the law library, stayed there for about 3.5 months. I even had, because the law librarians at that time was a lady named Nancy and Holly, and they would get me books from all over because I needed to know. And then I started selling dope, like for real. And the way I stopped selling drugs is I read this blueprint. At that time, I was they labeled as a gangster disciple, but I evolved into the blueprint of growth and development, and I saw I was destroying my own community, and so I walked away from that lifestyle. But it was a shock in so many areas for me because I was already like beating. I had a couple of cases pending, and I was going to beat them, and now I'm on a whole new wavelength. And so I went to the court. And if anybody has ever read that book by Michelle Alexander about the new Jim Crow, I told the judge exactly what that book said in 95, I think it was, and they locked me up in the mental health center for 6 months. So after that, that was really, like, I did about 2.5 years total for being incarcerated. So that's the gist of my prison life for the most part.
So you mentioned the blueprint. Mm-hmm. Was that a book or was that like a program or?
So it was actually I had it right up here a little while ago, but it was from Gangster Disciple. It was called The Blueprint, from Gangster Disciple to Growth and Development, and it's actually in a book form. What I got was at that time literature, and it was from the board, Larry Hoover. People know about him, but I truly give honor to that blueprint because that blueprint is what shifted the course I was going into life. And I feel for me, I can't speak to the character of this man, but what I can say is those teachings that I applied to my life is why I went to church. Those teachings that I applied to my life is why I got married when I was originally married, to raise a family. Those teachings had me say, I can't be part of the problem in my community no more. And if you knew, I was selling hellified dope. I had a beautiful 1980 Malibu with hydraulics on it. Like I was the first, person that they label as black to come through our town with hydraulics, having a good time. And I walked away from that lifestyle because of that blueprint. I did. And so I look forward to the day of really being able to say thank you to the one. And I always try to liken myself is the way they show El Haj Malik Shabazz, which we know him as Malcolm X, his relationship to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I give that same honor to Larry Hoover. Like that blueprint, that's the effect that it had on my life. And not knowing him, but just reading that and saying, you know what, I gotta turn from my own wicked ways.
Thank you for going into that a little deeper, because I've always been a huge advocate for reading. Even if the guys, when they say, oh, well, I can't read very good, I says, well, pick up a comic book, something that's easy. Children's books, you have kids. Read Cat in the Hat. Get in the practice of reading to your kids on the phone. And then I find that later on, I hear from those same people and they say, I read this book and it changed my life. And I think, a lot of us that have been on that journey have that special book. Mine was Thich Nhat Hanh's Cooling the Flame of Anger. So I like it, and I picked that up on one of your sites because I've been looking at some of your websites and what you've been doing. So, and that's something, is that still available? Because I'd like to recommend that to others.
I cannot find that book for nothing. I don't even remember where I got it from, but I do believe at some point it's going to be re-edited and the second edition will come out. So
I'll keep my eyes open.
So it will. And when it comes out, I'm in Illinois, so I kind of would have knowledge of it. I'll make sure when it comes, or if I come across one, I got your address and I'll be sure to send it to you.
Okay, great. So let's see, where do we want to go next? So you came home and it still took you some time to get your footing and decide what you were going to do with your life. You said about 5 years.
So from the last time I was locked up, 92 to 99, when I went to the mental health center, that's when the shift started happening. I feel like it was 90. It had to be 90, 95 because my daughter, she was born in 94. So it had to be 95 because she was already born. But then from 97, really all the way up to 2019, that's where a lot of the journey was happening that led me into running for president. And so I say I got involved in the community. I received the Frederick Douglass Man of the Year Award in 96, I think it was, because of the work I was doing in the community. The police officer that raided my house wound up becoming the chief of police, and I sat on a board with him. If you go to my Hood Candidate website, you will see the mini trailer. He's in there saying Andy's a person of character. I got a recommendation letter from him. I started getting involved in working with politicians, not in the politic process, but just for the liberation of people that were labeled as gangs and stuff like that. Like I would become a real good advocate, and I was in the community and I never took sides other than what was right. So I became a speaker. I would go around the schools. In fact, Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, she introduced me one time at a 2005 U.S. Department of Labor conference. It was something, Economic Opportunity Act. And I didn't even know who she was till years later. And I wish I could have had that video, but I got a picture of her in the background. And so I worked at a couple nonprofits, and I just really was learning. I even went to a police fundraiser, and they was looking at me crazy in the beginning, but probably after about 30, 45 minutes in, it was like, we really like dude, because once you get to talking, I was at the mayor's house, just a lot that went through that journey. I wound up owning my own mortgage company. So it just was accumulation. And then to get to, I think, why I ran for president is it was May 3rd, 2019. And I was sitting at the computer, kind of like what I'm doing now. And it was 10 o'clock. And I heard this voice. Would you consider running for president? And I was like, all right, cool. And that's exactly what I said. I'm like, all right, cool. And the next morning, I was going to paint somebody's house. I picked up one of the guys that work with me to paint, and I told him, this is what I'm going to do. He said, you can't run for president. You're too honest. So, okay. The person's house I was going to paint for, Mr. Conley, he was a sheriff at the time. He's retired now. And I told him, and he was questioning me, saying, man, what are you going to be liberal? I didn't know none of the answers to none of these questions. And that Monday, I posted it on Facebook before I told my wife, because I was very uncomfortable that she'd be like, you can't do that. And I don't think she would have did that, but I just was uncomfortable, like, hey. And so I told her, and she said, let me pray about it. And she did, and she's like, baby, I'm here for it. And so from there, I read the federal election, learned how to do the paperwork to file it. I started out as an independent. Then I joined the Libertarian Party. It was during COVID, so I was doing some Zooms. I did do, a live debate a few different times. But with the Libertarian Party, they don't have debates. They have dialogue, because every last one of them believe in freedom. So it wasn't like a competition. And when they were choosing their candidate, which was Miss Jo Jorgensen, I didn't know how to get on the Zoom. I didn't know how to do all that stuff. I still was new to this. And so I didn't participate in it. And so after that, I was like, you know what? I feel God called me to run for president, so I'm going back to being an independent. In the county I was in, DuPage County, I have 10 votes that I know for a fact happened because I know the 10 people. I got a few other votes that I know that I was able to, register. So I say accumulation, I got 17 votes. And I'm telling you, you would have thought that I won. Because when November 5th, 2020 came about, I stayed into the campaign. I never stopped, And from there, I sued the United States and 30 states for the ongoing role of slavery. The decision, I had to appeal it because they said I didn't have standing. I appealed it, and probably a few weeks ago, the decision came down. I sued the Bell County Juvenile Center in Texas because I learned about this thing called private attorney general. And that allows a regular citizen to step in the shoes of the attorney general when there's like a systemic injustice going on. It's like, we're going to aid and assist the attorney general. Well, they didn't honor that. But when I thought I had it, I sued the police department on the slave patrol, slave catchers. So I just was going on a suit frenzy, challenging these issues from prison labor to the gang database to I sued the IRS for a case with my wife, and we won. So I think when we're talking about the real experience of somebody who's an advocate because he's one of the people, that's what I bring. I wasn't the one that said, oh, I didn't get elected, so I'll wait till next time. Or no, I kept on with what I believed, what was right. And when we look historically, they didn't call the people politicians, they called them statesmen. And what a statesman is, somebody that does what's right, even if it's not popular. A statesman is more concerned about the next generation instead of the next election. And that's who I am when we talk about, the politics. And so much so when it was coming around this time, around May, June, because I filled out my paperwork June 13th. I was questionable about this, like, I don't know if I should do this again. I don't believe in this government system. I'm trying to overthrow the government in the sense of from the Declaration of Independence. And my wife was like confused, like, how are you going to do this? You're against this. And I didn't know. And the reason why I made up my mind to do it again, because I felt like this is a calling. And it's a calling. It's something that I'm created to do. So I couldn't fight against the spirit that was in me. And when I look at what we need to represent people, not parties, people, There's going to take somebody with experience. And when we look at one avenue of the litigation I've been involved in, that's experience. When you look at how I've been locked up, that's experience. When you look at the fact that I've been to the mental health center, that's experience. When you look at what you can't look at it, but my little brother committed suicide from an opioid overdose. That's experience because it's personal. I had another little brother that was gay and he drove his car into a ravine, like a ditch, I don't know if it was suicide or not, but I don't think he would just drive his car in there, In my hometown, Aurora, there was a mass shooting and the guy killed 5 people and shot 6 police officers. Andy had to do the eulogy to his funeral. And then I had to go to the police fundraiser because I'm still a mediator. And I was very, very uncomfortable going. Because, this dude shot, 6 police officers. But there was no beef between that. Like, in fact, a couple officers really said it's admirable what I've done and stood up to this, this situation. And somebody had to be in there for that family instead of, I can't begin to tell you how many churches was like, we're not doing that here, So there's a real live experience that I'm bringing into this campaign, but I'm also helping people understand that it's more about me applying for a job, because that's why I call myself the Presidential Applicant, because there's a job that has a job description. And so often I feel like we've been electing people that are not qualified for this position. And that's not just the president. I'm talking about in the Senate. I'm talking about in the House of Representatives. And the reason why I'm saying that, because these policies that are being passed, a lot of them are unconstitutional. And a lot of those that are in the House of Representatives and the Senate are lawyers. And if lawyers knew that these legislation that you're passing is infringing upon the people's rights, you couldn't pass that. You wouldn't go in looking for people to agree with you. You would go in challenging this as being unconstitutional. The Habitual Offender Act, the 1994 Crime Bill, RICO, the Controlled Substance Act, all of that is unconstitutional. And that's where I come in saying this campaign is about experience matters. You don't want somebody that just can say, we want to free all the people. You want somebody that has experience saying, no, we want to go back to the correctional facility, what it was intended to do. We want to get rid of victimless crimes because they're not crimes. They're infractions that you're penalizing. For example, I've been fighting a traffic ticket for 4 years. Why? Because I can tell you the stop was prolonged. It was profiled. I went to a bench trial. One of the tickets I beat, the other ticket I didn't. So how can you find the officer credible on one and not credible on another? This is the life experience of somebody that you're bringing in. And I don't think, without me trying to compare, no other candidate has this message. No other candidate has this experience. And no other candidate looks at this as a job. They're looking at it as a position of power, promising to do something that hasn't been done in 50 years. The closest we've ever gotten to, in my opinion, of a president that was truly a representative of all the people is Jimmy Carter.
I agree with you there. And boy, you've got a good platform to run on, man. I love what you have to say. But this is the thing, is people in positions of power, which our politicians are, don't usually come from a position of life experience of the normal everyday person. A lot of times they're people of privilege. And this is, so now I have to ask you, 2024, are you running? Are you going to be a write-in, or are you going to be on the ballot?
So what we've done, yes, I'm in it. I filed my statement of candidacy papers on June 13th. What we did is we started a party. a political party called We Are the People Party. And it just really happened last Sunday, the Sunday that just passed. And We Are the People goal is to get 300 people across the states to run for office under the platform of abolishing modern day slavery. Okay? That's what the platform is. And my website is, it's not fully up. It's up to give a donation to andywilliamsjr.com. But I also have the website of the Hood Candidate, which that's who I am, the Hood Candidate. And that's the guy that says we can't wait till an election. We have to do it now. But going back to the We Are the People party, it's 468 seats that's up for election in the 2024 re-election, bid. There's 33 seats in the Senate and 435 in the House of Representatives. If people like me wanted to run for office and didn't know what to do or how to do it, and you had a heart for the people because you believe you are one of the people, and you have a demonstrated history of solutions, whether you're advocating for them, have a organization, and I'm going to use this brother Glenn Martin. He said, people most closest to the problem are often the ones with the solutions, but they're furthest away from the resources. I'm here to say I've done this the second time. I know how to fill out the paperwork. I know what to do. We get us one little flyer that says, the We Are the People Party, and our platform is to abolish modern day slavery in all forms. We have a unified message because we are the people. We will do a lot in this election that has never been done before. So it's not me running on a campaign by myself. It's we the people running on the campaign together, collectively, unified. Then that means come 2025, once we do our oaths, which I'll do an affirmation, we become 2/3 of Congress. And Congress has the power to declare whatever we want to. And I can assure you, we're going to declare taxes are unlawful. Modern day prisons is modern day slavery. So if there's no victim, people come home because we're repealing the Controlled Substance Act. And I will say this, we are the people. Whenever we get somebody that's locked up under the Controlled Substance Act that becomes a member of our party, we have standing. And we will go file a claim now. We're not going to wait till 2024. We're not doing that. We can't wait till another election to help people get free. And so that's what makes our party, that's what makes our movement, that's what makes our campaign different from any other one. Because we cannot wait till another election for people to be liberated, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. The time is now, and we got to do it.
Now, before I forget, I want you to please give us your website.
One website is www.hoodcandidate. And if you look up Hood Candidate anywhere, that's my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that is there. The campaign website is andywilliamsjr.com. And it's being done right now. And I'll share this with the people so we know. If I had the financial resources to put it together, it would have been done 2 months ago because that's when I paid for it to get done. So I had the money to pay for it. But I have to work every single day, painting, doing what I got to do so the rent can be paid and the things like that. Because that's what happens when you're one of the people. You don't get to just say, I got a war chest full of money that I can invest all this time into this. That's not what I'm able to do. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that's a good thing because we know what it takes to have a work ethic. And that same work ethic is what I bring to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But I'm bringing it with the people because come January 2025 all the way up to January 2030. 03 with that, what 2025 plus 8 years is 2033, because I believe we'll be there 8 years. We're gonna be having parties. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be having parties. because that's who we are. We like to party. We don't bother nobody. We just want to party, and we're gonna have a lot of coming home reentry parties. You know, they have big parties over there. But when have you had the White House full of people that were formerly houseless that get to come in and have their graduations and celebrations, and people coming home by the busloads? You go in by the busload into these prison industrial complex, where we're gonna house them in by the busloads coming to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, so we can have some coming home parties. That's what we're gonna be doing.
Love it. I absolutely love it. I have to send you some information on a group that I'm involved with here in Maine called the Awakening Exchange. I'd love it if you could just stop in one time at least to see what we're doing here in this state, because I think you'd love what we're doing. And I know the group would love what you're doing. So
I love Maine. There's a guy named Ryan that's on one of those plantations, and he set up a whole Zoom call with me from behind the wall. Like, he set up the, if I'm correct, this Maine. They're doing a lot of good stuff. Yes, he set up the Zoom call, and we did a whole thing, and I love that. I love that. And I'll say I 100% am looking forward to coming to Maine. And I believe by the time October comes, I'll be able to move around a lot more. But what we're going to wind up doing is we're going to wind up doing virtual town halls in each state. So with the Awakening, we'll do a virtual town hall that's marketed through the Awakening. Like, you know, those that are really boots on the ground saying this. Because what Andy is asking to the listeners that's on these plantations, send a letter to your family for me and say it's one of us that's running. And he's not just about us, he's about the people. Because I don't want to limit it and be like, oh, this is my primary target, because that's not representing people. But send a letter to your family, your loved ones. Reach out to them and say, go look up this dude, Andy Williams. Go look up this dude, Hood Candidate. Because we can afford to send a letter. We can afford to tell somebody on the phone call. We can afford to share the message, because that's the power we have. I'm just a messenger for the people, and we the people have the power. So why don't we utilize that power and talk about something that's finally a breath of fresh air? And that's what we could do. Share people that's got podcasts that, you know, you've been on, and say, listen, reach out to the brother Andy, get him on your podcast, put him in your newspaper, put him in your newsletter, and we will have a movement that can't be stopped.
Well, I'm known for social media posting continually. It's like I do it every single day. So you will be added into those. I've already put you on Twitter today and LinkedIn and Mastodon. I don't know if you've heard of that one yet.
Oh, you're going to have to send
I'm
it to me so I can get on it.
posting you everywhere. So, hey, Andy, I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up. Was there anything else that you're just dying to get out before we close off? Or
So once we get the We Are the People website up, which again, I got a Hood Candidate site that you can reach out to me on right now, is there's a lot of people that are incarcerated unlawfully. I do a lot of prison litigation work. So reach out to me if you feel you got a wrongful conviction, especially if you're part of an organization or a team. With me filing these lawsuits that I filed against the United States and 30 states, I've learned a lot. And I think I've learned enough to recognize that we have a blueprint that can help a lot of people get free. We just got to know how to do it. And that goes back to what I'm saying. We can't wait till an election to help the people. We don't have that ability to say, if you elect me, this is what I'm going to do. Because the only three things I can promise you I'm going to do: I'm going to go to the post office and change my address to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If you ever seen the movie 50 Shades of Grey, they had a red room, and that's exactly what I'm going to put in the White House, because you seen my wife, she's about as beautiful as ever, so I definitely need a red room. And I'm definitely going to put some different people on the wall, because it's my house, so I'm going to put family pictures up there on who I feel should be up on the wall. And that's what I got the power to do. That's what I'm going to do.
That's great. Hey, I want to let our listeners know we've had Andy Williams Jr. here with us today. You can go to his site, andywilliamsjr.com or goodcandidate.com to find out more about what he's doing. We will be staying in touch with Andy because I want to find out what's going on, because I'm not crazy about our two-party system, and I love the idea of we the people being a third party.
Yeah. Well, we're going to party, so, and we're going to set it up so I can come out there to Maine and go to the Awakening. Like I said, I think after October, I'll be able to travel the way I want.
We can actually do a Zoom thing on the Awakening too, so we'll check that out. I'll send you all the info.
Please set it up. We're ready to go. I think I should try to recruit you, Miss Valerie, to be part of our media team.
Hey, you never know, right? Hey, it's been so great, Andy. Okay, everyone, I'm getting ready to close out now. This has been the Prison Pod. We've had Andy Williams Jr. here today. He's been such a great guest, and I really appreciated taking the time out. It's a scorcher of a day today, so it adds extra to the day. Again, I want to hear from you. It's the Prison Pod, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine, 04473. Until next time, read a book.